Hey everybody, this is Yoritomo, and I am here with the second installment on AFK Cats weapons. This time I'm going to be talking about hunter weapons, but before we actually get into the weapons, I'd like to take a look at some of the attributes of the weapons themselves. So the first thing I want to take a look at is attack speed. So we have one attack per 1.2 seconds is fast, 1.6 seconds medium, 2 seconds is slow, and more than 2 seconds is very slow. So at first you think if that fast weapon is going to do more damage, but that's not actually how it always works. You have DPS, which is damage per second. So if you do a lot of attacks every second, or an attack every 5 seconds, you still only do the same amount of damage per second. So that's not really what that speed is. So the next thing you might think of is that, oh, well, that gets us the weapon skill quicker. But each one of the different weapons actually has the amount of energy gain, and that's tuned to make it so that each one of these weapons will do their main skill at about the same time. So what is this speed actually doing for you? Why do you have a weapon speed? That is all about the cats. Most of the cats have abilities or skills that they will do, maybe a percentage of time each time they attack, they could do something, or every time they attack, they can do something. And a good example of that is Purgy that just got reworked so that every time Purgy attacks, it will do 1% of the hit points in damage to the enemy cat, going up to 1000% of DPS. So if you've got a really fast attack weapon, you're doing that 1% very, very, very fast. Whereas if you've got a slow weapon, you're doing it slow. So in that respect, you do a lot more damage because of the weapon speed, because of the skills and abilities of the cat, not because of the weapon itself. So hopefully that makes sense. The attack speed gets your skills off quicker. The next thing I want to talk about is the range of the weapon. This can be very handy if you're trying to tune an attack, especially against bosses. Sometimes bosses will attack the back row, or they'll attack the front row, or they'll attack certain type of cat. This allows you to try to place the cats in specific areas on the battlefield so that the cats that you want to tank the damage will tank the damage, and the cats that you don't want to take damage will be in another place. It really helps mainly in the boss battles. If you're doing battles in the arena, sometimes you can move cats around to different places as well. Sniper is an example of a cat that targets the back row and does massive amounts of damage if they're at long range. So if you were really caring about that, if you went up against an opponent that had a lot of snipers at high level, you could put short range weapons on your cats, move them up, and then he's not going to do that 300% nuke that he would normally do to that back row. So that's just an example of what range can do for the weapons. It really didn't matter in the last video I did because that video was about the fighters and they were all melee weapons, which means that they go right up next to the cats that they're fighting. The last thing I want to get into before I get into the weapons themselves is that the weapons really need to be tuned to the team. By that I mean if you're doing a freeze team, it helps if you have freeze weapons, or if you've got a poison team, it helps if you've got poison weapons. Getting that synergy really helps, and that's where a lot of teams get a lot more power, is that it's not just a bunch of cats with a bunch of random weapons that do some damage. It's the cats work together, they synergize, and they do something special. So hopefully we'll get into that a little bit more as we go through the video here. So the first weapon we have in this group of common weapons is Tommy Cat. So this one here does 250% damage to the cat you're targeting and increases your attack speed by 30% for 5 seconds. So it's kind of like a baby version of the Cat Father, which is one of the most popular hunter weapons in the game. It's okay. You get a little bit of an attack speed boost there. Um, so if you've got a cat, if you don't have a Cat Father and you've got a cat that you want to get your attacks off quicker, you could think about it. But the problem here is that the attack speed is slow, so even if you get that 30% attack speed, you're now just getting up to basically the medium attack speed. So in that respect, really all you're getting is the 250% attack uh, once every time this thing goes off. So really not that special. The next weapon is the critter. So this one it does the 150% of wielder's DPS. So most of these do a chunk of damage every time it goes off. 150% is not all that much, but it does do a critical hit every time this goes off. So if you're using a solid cat against bosses and you don't have one of the epic weapons like the Cat Father that goes off really quickly, the critter guarantees that you drop one of Solid's nukes every time the weapon goes off. So it's going to be better than most of the other weapons on the list for a cat like Solid that requires you to do a critical hit to get the massive damage off. So this weapon's not very good for most of the cats, but for a cat like Solid, it is one of the best weapons. Not the best, but one of the best weapons for him. The next weapon is one that silences cats. So this one here, if you could get it to go off before the enemy's Shelly does its stun on your team, that could be a good use of it. But you have to make your team faster than theirs. And again, this is just a common weapon, probably won't be used much. It's only a silence for one cat. The next weapon here, Smelly Kitty, is another really good common weapon. It deals 50% of wielder's DPS, so that's just a little tiny chunk when this thing goes off. But it also deals poison, and that's 50% of the initial damage each second for 10 seconds. So there's 500% damage over time, but it does 500% damage when this thing goes off. Additionally, damage of this skill increases with each use by 25%. So if it goes off again, now you're doing 750% damage. Goes off again, it's doing 1000% damage, then 1250% damage. And these, since it's 10 seconds, so if you've got some speed increases on your team, you may have these stacking on one another. So you can be doing pretty good damage with a common weapon just because this poison is doing so much damage over time. So probably one of the best common weapons, and I like it better than a lot of the rare weapons. That seems to be a continuing theme. I like some of the commons better than the rares. This next weapon that we have here, double cat barrel, it does 200% damage in a column, so it probably hits multiple cats. Kind of an AoE damage. Nothing special about it. Next one does 200 to a specific cat and freezes it for 3 seconds. Again, might be cool in a freeze comp, but it's only a 3-second freeze, so again, not terribly special. Speedy Catsaur, you do 400% damage, so that's a pretty good chunk of damage. And then it decreases healing received by 50% for 10 seconds. I don't know that that's really going to help you out that much in most circumstances. It's only one cat. I mean, I guess if you're slowing down the healing on the enemy tank and the enemy team is doing a lot of healing, it could help out a little bit, but it's a fairly specialized weapon. There's only a few times when you'd really think this is the weapon I need. All right, the next weapon, the Boomstick. I wonder where they got that name. Here's a movie quote. Let's see if any of you know where this comes from. This is my Boomstick, the 12-gauge double-barreled Remington, S-Mart's top of the line. I'm sure there's folks out there that know where that came from. Probably knew it as soon as they saw the name of that weapon. So this one deals damage equal to 100% of his DPS, a small chunk of damage, does knock back to his target and stuns it for 3 seconds. So in my last video, I kind of knocked the knockback and fear, saying that it just messes up your targeting. And with a tank, it probably really does. It's more useful with a hunter. So in this case, you could put your hunter in the back row, and then the enemy tank, when it comes up, you could knock it back and stun it. So if Shelly's sitting in the middle of your team, you can knock him forward and stun him. That'll give you a little bit of respite from Shelly beating up all of your team members. So the knockback is more useful if you've got it on a hunter and you can really decide who you're knocking back. Now we get into the epics. So hunters have some really good epics. The two that most people recommend are the Ice Scratch X and the Cat Father. So here the Ice Scratch X does an AoE 200% damage, and then it silences all hit enemies for 2 seconds. Each use of this skill increases the duration of silence by 1 second up to a maximum of 10 seconds. So if you can really crank this thing out, you can start silencing the enemy team for a long amount of time. So this really works on a cat that fires fast. Mexicat is great because you go into a level and his attack speed is increased by 300%. So suddenly this thing just goes boom, 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 and you're silencing. So it works great when the cat has its own skill that speeds up your attack. Um, the other one, the Cat Father, this one works very well when you have a cat skill that you're wanting to go off quickly. So it's the opposite. The Furry Fury wielder deals damage to his target equal to 100% of his DPS. Additionally, his attack speed is increased by 100% and hit chance is increased by 20%, both for 5 seconds. So what happens there is that you go into a level and you're wanting to, say, solid again. I'm using solid as an example on a lot of these, and this weapon is the best weapon for solid because of this. So you're cycling through this weapon skill twice as often, or the cat skill twice as often, because you've bumped up your attack speed by 100%. So now when you're waiting for solid to crit, you're firing twice as many times, so you've got twice as many chances for that crit to happen. Perky's another one where he does that 1% HP capped at 1000% every time he fires. You fire twice as often, you do twice as much damage. So this is really good for a cat that has a skill that you're relying on to go off quickly. So Cat Father is one that's the cat skill that you want to go off quickly. Ice Scratch X is a skill that you want to go off quickly, so you use a cat skill that makes it go faster. Again, kind of the opposite. We have the Fuzik 47 here, and this is basically taking any hunter and making it kind of like a boss killer. So it deals damage to the wielder's target equal to 7% of the target's max HP. And then the damage of this skill ignores 100% of target's armor. Damage of this skill cannot exceed 5000% of wielder's DPS. So you aren't going to do as much damage as one of the boss killers like Solid or Pergy or Oscar, But if you don't have one of those built, this is better than nothing. It's going to do more damage than any of your other cats likely will in place of that true boss killer. The last one here is the Meowless. And this one, wielder deals damage to his target equal to 100% of his DPS, plus an additional 50% of his DPS for each friendly or enemy cat on the battlefield, including himself. So here, he does 100%, and then at the beginning of the battle, as long as it's not against a boss, you've got 12 cats on the field. That means you're doing an additional 600%, so that's 700% of his DPS. So that's a pretty good chunk of change that damage that you're doing to that enemy cat. Most people really don't see the Meowless as being as good as the Cat Father, even though it's a fast attack speed. You don't end up getting as many attacks off. Meowless is probably better for those cats that you're looking for those cat skills because it is fast, but it doesn't go as fast as the Cat Father. So if you were ranking these, I would rank the Cat Father and the Eye Scratch X at the top of the list. Then I would put the Meowless and then probably the Fuzik, because once you really get your cats built up, you're probably going to have those boss cats built. If you're in a guild and you're trying to get the bosses killed, you want to have at least one boss cat built, or boss killer cat built. I can't say that right now. But you're going to have one of those built, and the Fuzik is probably going to end up just kind of getting stored. So let's take a look at my cats. If we take a look at the weapons that I have, you can see that my Fuzik is on Laura, and it's just being stored there. She's not a good cat for me right now. I haven't really built her up, so it's just a storage spot. You can see that I really, really love my cat fathers. I have 3 of them, and I have each one of the boss killer cats equipped with one of those. I also have my Mexicat with the Eye Scratch X. And like I said, he's great with that because he can get that weapon skill off quickly. He comes into a level, boom, 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 and the silence is out there right away. The rest of the weapons I don't really have on any special cats. They're just kind of sitting there. I am thinking about making a poison team, although I'm very, very light on poison cats right now. It's going to take me a while, but if I do, I'm going to have to test out the Smelly Kitty with that team comp. So there you have it. That is my review of the Hunter weapons. Let me know what you think. If you agree, disagree, what I've said here. As always, I appreciate it if you like, subscribe, comment. And we've got 2 more of these videos that I have planned, one for the Cannoners and one for the supports. So those will be coming in the next few days. I hope you enjoy them. Yoritomo out.